actually technically part two, the first time that we've done like a two-part series in Yale Alumni Live. Earlier this week, we sat down with John Wang, who is on camera over here, who is the founder of Queen's Night Market. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the market. We're going to talk about the cookbook, The World Eats Here. And we also have an amazing vendor coming out of New York City, Amy Pryke, who is with Native Noodles, who's going to be doing a cooking demo this evening. So we're really excited to be here once again, because it's been several weeks since we've been here on Facebook doing a Yale Alumni Live, which is an activity that we've been doing since we've been all home quarantined, safely distancing from one another and trying to connect with our Yale community. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce John, but I do want to remind everybody, because I just needed to remind myself since it's been so long, that we are in two environments tonight. We have folks watching in Zoom. So those of you who are in Zoom and have questions for John, Storm, or Amy, you can pop those into the chat or in the Q&A, or if you're watching in Facebook, you can put them right into the comments and I will get them over to whoever your question is for. So without further ado, John and Storm, welcome, and Amy, welcome. We'll get started by John and Storm. Will you just tell everybody a little bit about Queen's Night Market?
Sure. Queen's Night Market launched in 2015, about 2 years after I had quit being a lawyer. It's sort of an open air festival on Saturday nights in Flushing Meadows, Corona Park in Queens. We attract, last year when we were still operating, we're on hold for the pandemic. We were attracting nearly 15,000 people a night, almost something like over 300,000 people last year. We have unique price cap on food. So we have up to 60 independent food vendors any night. And over the last 5 years, we've represented over 90 countries through our vendors' food. There's a unique $5 price cap, which now has some $6 exceptions at the event. And there's music, there's games, there's art, merchandise, all sorts of stuff. But it's a fun time and super community oriented, and hopefully a popular local attraction.
And one of the cool requirements for vendors selling food is?
Right. So one of the things that we do is when we curate food vendors, the main requirement is asking people to relate what they want to sell to their personal and cultural heritage, which has the practical impact of sort of making sure that we have traditional foods made the way that people grew up eating them. We don't really curate based on Instagrammability or how photogenic the food is. It's just about the stories that people have relating their food to their personal backgrounds. So that's, I think that sort of makes us stand out in some ways, and we're not just, we're not trying to pick the next food trends whatsoever. Quite the opposite.
So since we go ahead,
cool if suddenly Singaporean food was all the rage in New York, thanks to Native Noodles. Amy Pryke, for example, could happen.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's going to be all the rage on the Yale Alumni Facebook group after this evening, and also on Yale Food and Drink, which is a great partner of ours. So I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit, because we did do the Tuesday night Instagram live with John, and we talked about John's background and how he came to, create Queen's Night Market. So maybe John, just tell everybody a little bit about your path to Yale and what you did, what schools you were at Yale, and then how the market evolved, just real quick so that everybody's caught up to speed.
Yep, quick bio in 3 sentences. Grew up in Texas, went to undergrad at the University of Michigan, and ended up at Yale Law School and Yale SOM. Graduated 2009 with a joint degree. And then Senates 4 and 5, went on to be a corporate lawyer in New York City, took a year off to figure out what I wanted to do after 4 years, and then started the Night Market Project, Queen's Night Market Project. So, and that was launched 2015 in April.
Awesome. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about, so there was a question that we did receive right at the very beginning, and the question was, why Queens for the night market? How did you come to be in Queens?
Sure. As I previewed before we actually hit Facebook Live Go, it was both practical and sort of symbolic. At first, when I had the idea the next day, when I had the idea to start a night market in New York City, the very next morning, I basically went on Google Earth and went basically square foot by square foot over all of New York City, trying to find a space that I thought in my imagination could host something like what I wanted to host. And so after throwing out, spaces at such a premium in New York City, there weren't very many venues at all that could host it that were sort of commutable. And so I narrowed it down to like maybe 3 or 4 areas, one of them being Flushing Meadows, Corona Park. And after thousands of cold emails and unanswered emails, started researching more about the boroughs, and Flushing Meadows hosted 2 World's Fairs, and Queens is, by some accounts, the most diverse area in the entire world. So our focus on diversity made it sort of match really well there. And so that was one of the places that gave us the green light eventually. So it was a little bit of, symbolic resonance, but also some practicality too, because, we take up almost 400,000 square feet every Saturday, which is a huge, massive plot of land.
So obviously, the question came up in Instagram Live as well, but, this is a crazy time for everyone. And, I think everyone is missing live music and festivals and activities and events. And unfortunately, Queens Night Market is not able to operate right now under the restrictions that exist. So what have you guys been doing? And maybe now this is a great time you want to start talking about The World Eats Here and what's been going on with that.
Just so happens we have a copy here. So Storm and I wrote a cookbook based on the Queens Night Market. It features 88 recipes from over 50 vendors representing over 40 countries. So each of the recipes is paired with a vendor profile, sort of a narrative, a story about their backgrounds. Storm mostly wrote adapting from her oral history interviews, which she'll tell you about in a second. We had planned to release the book in April, right in time for the Queens Night Market opening for this year, and obviously that didn't happen. So we're sad that we can't walk into bookstores and see actually these missing on the shelf because they've been sold out. But we would have liked to have seen the placeholder at bookshelves in books in person. But it's great. We got a lot of amazing sort of critical acclaim so far, which is super lucky. And Amy was featured, the book and Amy were featured just 1.5 weeks ago on Bloomberg, which is fantastic. But I'll let Storm tell you a little bit about her amazing profiles and narratives in the book.
Yeah, so when I first met John, he was trying to figure out where to put this idea. It was very idea stage in 2014. And I remember going to the location of the Queensland Market, now behind the Hall of Science in the dead of winter with a little camcorder. Use that video to make the first Kickstarter, and it was all very just conceptual at that stage. And then we had a huge falling out, didn't talk for a while. And then when I came back into his life several years later, the Queensland Market was flourishing, which I was thrilled to see. But there wasn't enough documentation for me that was satisfying enough that really captured the incredible diversity of stories that coincide at this place. And it's just an amazing coincidence of life trajectories. And so I started the Queens Night Market Vendor Stories Oral History Project, primarily focusing on collecting the vendor stories. And I started with the food vendors, but I would love over time to collect non-food vendors and also volunteers and staff and neighbors, and I could go on forever. So in the first year of this project, I collected 50 interviews with food vendors, including Amy. And these are sit down, long 2-3 hour interviews recorded on video. And these will all be archived and made publicly available eventually online. You could Google search Singaporean food NYC and learn about Amy's childhood memories of eating roti john or something. And I think it's just a great resource. So I've been making this over time, and that's how I got the stories that went into the cookbook. So the cookbooks, a lot of them are first person, excerpts from the transcripts of the oral histories, and some of them are more summaries, sort of depending on the style and the stories that each vendor wanted to emphasize. And this year, so I'm continuing the project, and I'm recording how the vendors are all doing in the pandemic, which is wild. And some are innovating in whole new ways. Amy's going to open a brick and mortar restaurant, which is amazing. Some have shifted more to online stuff. Some have lost restaurant jobs and had to put their whole business on hold. Anyway, so that's what I've been doing sort of professionally during the pandemic. But I just wanted to add that on a personal level, this cookbook has been such a nice way when we were just stranded in our house, with nothing and no access to international food, which, you know, is something that New Yorkers are so attached to, just the ability to have like food from all over the world at, you know.
We don't have a house, by the way. We have an apartment. I don't know why she said house.
Home is
Our book is really not selling out, so we're not buying houses yet.
I'm sure all the New Yorkers watching knew exactly what you meant, and they were totally fine with it.
Our building.
So you guys, one of the things I absolutely, you know, I love the book, and I think what the cookbook, I think what's so awesome about it is the storytelling and the ability to bring people together through stories, which is something that we've been trying to do here on Yale Alumni Live too. So it really works perfectly with the theme. And I think we're going to hear a little bit about Amy's story in just a minute, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Amy, if we want to, I think we're going to bring Amy on, and Amy and Storm can tell us a little bit about Amy and what that was like getting started with the market and what you're doing now. And then she's going to give us an awesome cooking demo. So hopefully my friend Kevin, who helps us out in the background, can bring Amy and Storm and John on together, and everyone can meet Amy Price from Native Noodles, who is featured in the cookbook. So Amy, hello.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you came into, so Amy is not your usual vendor. Well, the wonderful thing is there's no like usual, people come to Queensland market as vendors from so many different professional backgrounds. I mean, it blows your mind. Amy came straight out of Columbia Business School. It was like her project.
She wanted to go to Yale SOM, but sadly, for whatever reason, she ended up at Columbia Business.
Another life.
Amy, can you share a bit about your professional background and how you ended up at the Queensland market?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to keep it pretty brief, I was born and raised in Singapore, which makes sense why I'm trying to bring Singaporean food right now to my current home, New York City. I moved away from Singapore when I was 18 to go to NYU for undergrad. And after I finished undergrad, I worked in financial services and management consulting for 4 years. Essentially figured out it wasn't really for me in terms of my long-term goals, and decided that what I really wanted to do was to be in the food world, specifically to hopefully open multiple restaurants, and to kind of have a restaurant group. I mean, I can go into why that's interesting, like maybe later, but it was just like my goal that I figured out that was what I wanted to do with my life. And so being international, I couldn't just quit and, go work in a restaurant and try and build up from there. I had to go to business school, essentially, like, so that I wouldn't be out of like status immigration wise. So I thought, it's pretty much a long shot, but I'm just going to write my essay to business schools in New York, Southern and Columbia, about opening a restaurant and see if they bite, right? And maybe if they do, then it's a sign that I should go for it. And Columbia's deadline was first, so I applied and I got in. And so that was pretty great. And I saw it as a sign that I should keep going with this. So started in I graduated last year. So I guess it was like 2018 January that I started at Columbia. I did the 1.5 year program because I didn't need the summer internship. And while I was there, I focused really on taking entrepreneurship classes, supply chain. We have like a course called food entrepreneurship. And then the next step was to actually try the product out. And so that's where Queensland Market came into the picture. And for me, it was really a huge milestone because my first session at Queensland Market was actually just before graduation, like a month before. So it was I was like trying to put together the application, like worrying I wouldn't get in, etc. But really loved the mission of Queensland Market. It just reminded me of the hawker centers we have at home, right? Where it's like affordable, accessible, all kinds of different food, and like a big community feeling. And so luckily John accepted my application, and yeah, and that's how we got to pivot, like pilot at Queensland Market. And I was there from April through October, most Saturdays of last year.
Yeah. I remember when you we usually have a press event right before each season, a few weeks before each season, and Amy, being a new vendor, was invited to take part in the press event. And I remember Dana Cowan, who used to be the editor of Food and Wine, I sent her an invite and she showed up, and she sort of gravitated to Amy. And before Amy even vended a single day, I think she already had done an interview with Dana Cowan, which is pretty amazing. Like, it was kind of, and now she's in Bloomberg as well. So Amy's been sort of a superstar in terms of both vending and also the PR. It's been fantastic.
Well, the Laksa noodles you served that day were so good.
Right. Very.
Yeah. It's been a great like platform, so I'm excited to see where it continues to take me for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, we can talk about it. I don't want to delay the cooking demo, but Singapore. I don't know if you were in New York City, Amy, during the sort of lead up to the now does not exist Bourdain Hall.
Yeah.
And so I was pretty angry. I just remember because he was, the whole thing was based on Singaporean hawker stands, and that was such big news that never came to fruition. But it was the same year that the night market was opening, and so we were competing. He was like, Singapore hawker stands, and I'm like, every other hawker stand.
Yeah. I mean, I hope like me and some other people can find a way to kind of bring his vision to New York in some small way, right? But it was really.
Can you share a little bit about your experience with hawker centers that might help people understand what it's like if they haven't?
Yeah, for sure. So hawker centers are essentially large outdoor food courts. I think it was a way for the government to bring a lot of the street vendors under one roof that they could regulate, for food safety reasons, etc. But it's become such a part of Singapore's identity and food culture. I would say pretty much every Singaporean has at least like 10 meals a week probably, at a hawker center. And it's just super affordable, and you can find pretty much anything you're looking for all in one spot, and every neighborhood has one that kind of serves the immediate community. I don't know if any of you have seen Crazy Rich Asians, but maybe some of you have, and there's definitely an iconic scene in that movie that encapsulates the essence pretty well, where there's all these like smells and sights and kind of community feeling where strangers are sitting at a communal table and just having food from cutting across all ethnicities. So that essentially is a big part of Singapore's food culture, and the menu that I'm developing for my first physical location taps a lot on recipes and items from that culture.
It sounds like Singapore ripped off the Queen's Night Market.
Night market.
Anyway. Okay. Well, do you want to talk about your plans now or after the cooking?
No, let's do it after.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about the food. Tell me about Roti John. What is where fondest first?
What is Roti John?
What is Roti John?
So I would describe it as it is a breakfast sandwich, but you can have it any time of the day. We're making it in the evening right now, and I've had it for dinner many times. So it's essentially a bread sandwich-based dish, and the filling is omelette with minced meat. So typically beef or lamb, but it's also been done with sardines, sometimes vegetarian, where you just have the onions and then you add cheese to it. And then it's served with a spicy ketchup sauce, which I think is pretty iconic to the dish. So we're going to be making that. For those of you who are following along at home, we'll be making that as well today to put on top of the sandwich after.
And I know we sort of preview it, or we talked about it in the book, but since everyone's going to go out and buy a book and don't have it right now, can you tell us about the name Roti John? I found that super interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's one of those dishes that encapsulates the multicultural vibe of Singapore, because the dish originated from Indian Muslim immigrants, as far as I understand. And then it kind of got popularized in the 60s when British residents of Singapore would go and ask for a hamburger. And the kind of closest thing that the vendor could approximate to a hamburger was this sandwich. And then John was kind of the vernacular for Caucasians or British residents of Singapore at the time, and roti is the Hindi and Malay word for bread. And so
more Singapore ripping me off.
Yeah, it would be like, here's your Roti John, right? And then it kind of became adopted into part of the name. So like Roti John became the word for the sandwich till today.
That's so fun.
That's cool.
Do you remember eating it as a kid, or would you eat it like with your friends?
Yeah, it's one of the few sandwich-based dishes of Singapore, and not to stereotype. My dad is Caucasian, but I do remember going to hawker centers for breakfast with my family as a kid, and it was the dish my dad would gravitate toward versus something hot and soupy that we might go for that he would find absolutely intolerable in the humidity. So it just brings back fond memories of breakfast with my family and my dad, and it's still something we would order together today, like when I go home for vacations. Yeah.
Nice.
So should we
proceed?
get to it? Yeah, and then we can chat more. We have tons of questions for you, Amy, after once we're eating and have our mouths full. So.
Okay, so John's going to be doing the work, attempting to emulate the pro at this recipe while Amy explains all the steps, and I'll be the little cameraman.
Yeah. Stephanie, were you ready to go straight with the cooking demo?
Yeah, I'm like pumped that you guys are like taking this over and you're cooking and you're talking and you're interviewing. I'll just be here in the background fielding any questions that we get in Zoom and in the Facebook Live. Thank you guys. The stage is completely yours.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
So
Right.
I will, for anyone who's following at home, besides the ingredients that were listed in the event description, it would be great right now if you grab the plate that you intend for serving the sandwich. And it should be ideally the same size or a little smaller than the pan you're using. And that's because the only tricky part of this recipe is the actual serving of it when you're flipping the sandwich to serve. It can get a little messy. And so how I like to do it is to just put the plate here and flip it directly. So if you want to grab a plate of that size, that would be a good thing to do right now.
Got a Peter Rabbit plate.
Great.
Peter
So
Rose, good part.
we're gonna get started making the accompanying sauce. And so you'll need ketchup, sriracha, water, and sugar. So we're gonna do 2 tablespoons each of ketchup, sriracha, and water, and then 1 tablespoon of sugar. And you can prepare like a little ramekin or a bowl in which to keep the sauce to use later for dressing and dipping if you want.
Ketchup, sriracha.
Sugar. 2 tablespoons of sugar?
One.
1 sugar.
Okay. So Amy, one more time. It was 2 tablespoons sriracha, 2 tablespoons ketchup, 1 tablespoon.
Yeah, 2 tablespoons each of ketchup, sriracha, and water, and then 1 tablespoon of sugar.
Okay.
Oh, and water.
And you know what? And how many water? 1, 2, right?
2 water, yeah.
So I'm just mixing it right now, and for those who are following, it should be a pretty like pourable consistency.
Why are you using a spoon this time? During our rehearsal, Amy
What
used
did
the
you say about
chopsticks.
consistency? Should be a what?
It should be pretty pourable, so it's not as like
Horrible. They said horrible. I was like, that's not. Nah, you should not have your own food show. It should taste horrible, but okay. We got ourselves.
No, wait. Well, weren't you using 2 chopsticks to serve before?
I mean,
I use chopsticks to beat my eggs. Like
Yeah.
I was using a measuring spoon for this. But
okay.
you can use these for anything, I think. Okay,
Alright.
so the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to toast the bread. So like we can heat 1 teaspoon of oil in the pan, and then while that's heating, we're gonna butterfly the bread. So cut it and leave a little hinge on it. So it's over medium heat.
This is hot already.
So for this, you can use part of a baguette or you can use a hero roll. You just want it to be around 8 inches long. So this is the size I'm using right now.
Cool.
So we're gonna place the bread face down onto the pan. And then we're gonna leave it for about 2 minutes and then flip it and toast both sides.
So where do you get your bread in New York? Do you have a?
I live in the East Village in New York, so we have a little local French bakery that I'm pretty loyal to, that I go to. But honestly, I think for a lot of Asian sandwiches, I know this is also true for me. A lot of times you don't need to use like the fanciest baguette to make this. In fact, sometimes it's better to use a softer kind of baguette. So the kinds you can get in a packet from Trader Joe's, etc. That would be perfect for this.
Trader Joe's is not a sponsor, but we wish they were.
Yeah, I wish. A little higher. Okay. So, John, are you using lamb again this time or beef?
Yes, definitely lamb. Are you using beef or lamb this time?
I'm using beef. Yeah.
So I use every excuse I can to eat. Well, that sounds terrible. I try it.
It does sound.
Isn't it? Okay, never mind. I use every excuse not to eat animal products.
Oh, yeah?
No, but I mean, I'm just trying not to sound like a horrible carnivore.
What?
No. Everything in moderation.
Right. I was born in Texas, which sort of comes with territory.
Yeah.
And then, are you still toasting did you flip it or you don't flip it?
I flipped it. So mine was,
it.
my stove runs hot, so it got done pretty quickly.
Okay, so you flip and do the other side, okay?
And the aim is to get it kind of crispy, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be super crisp or evenly brown for that matter. It just has to be kind of toasty, right? So when you bite into it, there's some crunch.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you ever? I heard that you were making breads during the pandemic, hopping on the bread baking bandwagon. Have you ever tried to make this with one of your own breads?
I have, yeah. I made baguettes one day, but I will say I'm definitely not a bread expert or close to being one. So for commercial purposes, when I'm selling it, it's very unlikely I'll make my own bread. Aspire to it. I know. Okay, so my bread is actually done. It's pretty toasted.
Okay. I think I'm gonna do mine done.
Yeah. So the next thing we're gonna do is prepare everything we need for the filling. So I'm gonna start by mixing my half teaspoon of cumin into my.
Before we do that, I forgot to show you what Storm bought me yesterday.
What is
it? It says Ile from where I'm reading it, but I think it's All right. Okay, so what are we doing?
So I'm gonna mix my half teaspoon of cumin, which I've already measured out, into my ground beef.
I just want to show off that I've mortar and pestled our own cumin out of cumin seeds.
I know.
Because we actually had no ground cumin.
We had no ground cumin
in our building.
Yeah, so I've mixed it all up, and then the next thing we can do is prepare the scrambled mixture. So we're gonna crack 3 eggs, and you need 1 tablespoon of sambal oelek or any kind of basic red chili.
You might have slowed down a little bit. So you mix the cumin and the ground lamb.
Anything else? Salt?
That's it for now. Meat is done for now.
Once you're done with that, you moved on to what? The eggs? You're gonna do it for me?
No.
Yeah. So before I haven't done the eggs yet, but I'm just letting people at home know if they're following along that for the you need 3 eggs, 1 tablespoon of chili. In my case, I'm using sambal oelek, which is basic cut red chili, a little bit of vinegar and salt. Yeah, and then you found that at Whole Foods, right?
Or Trader Joe's, whichever one you want to say. It was Whole Foods, but I'm just trying to show loyalty to some potential sponsor in the future.
So, Amy, can we take this opportunity to explain what sambal oelek is to people who might not have heard of it?
Yeah, for sure. So it's pretty common in Southeast Asia. I have like a giant jar of it here. It's actually popping up in the cookbook, so I don't know if you can see it here.
Wait, can you make it up so we can see how big it is?
Yeah.
Whoa. Wait, so where do you get that one?
I got it from my Asian food supplier, like where I get my ingredients.
Nice. The pro stuff. You have to be a professional kitchen to shop there?
Yeah, so what it is, it's just red chili, vinegar, and salt. So it's pretty like a plain vanilla kind of chili. It doesn't have garlic or sugar in it like sriracha does. So if you don't have it, I wouldn't stress about it. It can be subbed with any kind of spice that you prefer, essentially. So we're gonna do 3 eggs, 1 tablespoon of chili, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt.
Sure. I don't know. Because she basically,
What happened?
He just spilled egg all over our book.
It's okay.
And that's bad because they're sold out everywhere, obviously. Okay, so sorry, the 3 eggs, what else?
3 eggs, 1 tablespoon of chili, and then 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And pepper to taste.
And do you whisk those together or?
Yeah. So I'm using chopsticks to whisk, like you alluded to just now. It's just like a form of habit for me, but obviously you can use a whisk or a fork right now.
So are you looking to what are you looking for? Just to break the yolk?
Break the yolks and combine it like how you would if you were making an omelet.
Okay, but it doesn't have to be like super integrated or anything.
No.
So
So the good news, just I want to tell everybody who's watching, the good news is that we do have this ingredient list posted on the event listing, and we will have not only the ingredient list, but the instructions step by step in the recording after the fact. So if anybody got lost in John's mess making or any of that, we will have all the instructions for you after the fact. So if you got lost along the way and now you're just having a random omelet, don't worry, we've got you for after the session. So back to you guys.
Good call.
So there's so many substitutions that you can have if you don't have the sambal oleg, right? You can use just a normal like a chili, what do you say, like powder or?
Yeah, chili powder, like red pepper.
The key ingredients are cumin, right?
I would say like the protein. So it's typically ground meat, beef or lamb, but I've definitely seen sardines being used. It's a pretty common item actually in Singapore. Or you can just leave out the meat altogether. But I would say, yeah, add the cumin definitely. And then the onions and garlic that we're going to add into the omelette are essential too. And then the spicy ketchup.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're all the hard part, John, you'll be glad to hear. It's all more about putting it all together now.
All right. So yeah.
We're gonna put 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil into the pan, and then add the garlic and the onions. Garlic first, and then onions like 30 seconds after.
Okay, I've got my oil
in. And the garlic, how chopped up do you want it to be?
Oh, right. So I forgot because we did this ahead of time, but for those who are following along and didn't do any prep before, we want 3 cloves of minced garlic, which I have done here already. And it can be, doesn't have to be super finely minced, just, you know, how you would usually mince. If you want and you don't like the kind of chunks of garlic in it, you can also grate it. That's fine, it's just for a taste. And then I have half a yellow onion here that's sliced. And I used an onion about this size and half of that. You see it?
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think my oil's on. It's probably hot. Is yours?
Yeah, I turned it off while we were explaining, but it heats up quickly. Yeah, so I would put in the garlic right now. Kind of stir it. In Singapore, at least, we like to say, or in Chinese, you kind of say stir fry the garlic until the smell comes out, but I know in English it doesn't really translate. So it's around like 15 to 30 seconds when it starts to release its fragrance. And then we can add the sliced onions.
Wait, in what language?
In Chinese.
Can you say it?
In Chinese?
How would you say it? Yeah.
Like, I guess I would say 香味出来. Like until its fragrance is released.
Try to memorize that.
Sorry, did you already put in your onions? I sort of may have jumped the gun. Oh, that's all right.
So, have you added your onions yet?
He already added his onions. I guess
I smelled the scent.
The smell was coming out.
Yeah. And so for the onions, you just want to stir fry them until they're translucent. For me, it usually takes between 4 and 6 minutes, depending on kind of the strength of your stove.
And you're on what? Probably medium heat, is that what you said?
Yeah, medium. Mm-hmm. And the next thing we're going to do once the onions are translucent is we're going to add the beef and cumin mixture, and then we're going to stir fry that until it's cooked through.
So we've got like 3 or 4 minutes while you're cooking the onions, right?
Oh, it smells so good.
So when is the first time you ate roti john ever? Do you remember that or not?
Oh, I don't know if I remember like the first time ever because I was probably a little kid. But the fondest memory is there's this place that sells like, it's an Indian Muslim stall that does prata and different kinds of Indian Muslim dishes near the Singapore Botanical Gardens that's near my house. And so we would go on like weekends as like a fun activity, walk around the park and then go there for breakfast. And that's my most predominant memory of eating that there multiple times. Yeah.
Nice. Can you share a little bit about your vision for native noodles? I remember you were trying to sort of encapsulate all sorts of Singaporean cuisine. Tell me more about the multicultural aspect of that.
Of Singaporean cuisine or of my restaurant?
Well, both. I mean, I just remembered in last year's interview you're sharing how you chose the dishes that you chose because they represented all the different.
Yeah, so I definitely want at least 2 or 3 dishes on the menu that are emblematic of the multicultural nature of Singapore. So the one I told like kind of like the signature dish I had at Queensland Market was this Laksa Noodle, which is a coconut-based noodle. And I really like that because of the story of how it incorporates, you know, Chinese influences and then Malay influences and Indian from the spices. And I think it's important because that's kind of a conversation opener. If people are curious about the food or the cuisine, I can point them to those few items on the menu and start the conversation about how Singapore approaches food and its history, etc. But then the other items on the menu that I envision are also just like crowd pleasers, like things that I think people will relate to, identify with, and enjoy. Yeah. How are your onions looking, Don?
Amazing.
They smell so good.
Probably the best onion sauteer that's ever existed. From Yale, anyways, for sure.
Important.
Best of the best Ivy Leagues, for sure.
Okay, so I think for me, I'm ready to add my beef in now. I don't know if this is...
Adding lamb.
And there it goes.
And so once this kind of loses its pink color and it's cooked through, you want to shape the garlic, onion, and meat mixture into almost the shape of your bread, so long and rectangular.
So I think I made the mistake last time of when we did this rehearsal. You want the shape of the entire loaf, not just like half of it, right? Like
Yeah,
you're gonna put the entire loaf. Yeah. I think that was my mistake. Part of my mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, it smells like lamb.
It smells so good.
And after we get off this call, after this Zoom, I'm gonna make another one of these because Storm wants to eat one. She can't eat regular bread. So
Thanks for adding.
Yeah, now I gotta. So this is rehearsal of 2 of 3.
Yeah, nice.
I'm gluten-free, and sadly, there's no good gluten-free baguette. But
Trader Joe's probably has a good gluten-free baguette.
Smells so good.
That's so very good.
So, oh yeah. So
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys can see and if I set it up, but kind of like concentrating it in the middle as one kind of shape versus scattered all over the pan is what you want. Yeah, John, yours looks great.
Yeah, I'm trying to zoom in.
And so what we're gonna do next is we're gonna pour the egg mixture on it. It's gonna obviously like spread like crazy, but don't worry. Almost immediately after we pour the egg mixture on, you're gonna take your bread and put it face down on the egg mixture, and then use your spatula and push the edges of the egg under the bread as far as you can.
Cool.
Fun.
So, are you? Yeah, ready? Well, I don't want to do it before. I don't want to steal the show, so I'm gonna wait till Amy does hers.
Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'll pour it then. So here's my egg mixture, and I'm gonna pour it in. Okay, I'll give it like 3 seconds, and then I'm gonna put my bread face down on it.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so mine is actually conformed pretty nicely. I'm just pushing the wet edges in, and the baguette's gonna soak up all that egg mixture right now, and we're gonna leave it for about 2 minutes.
Very nice. And you're pushing the sides.
Yeah.
I'm worried about your hand. Don't bring yourself. Yeah, so you kind of push it in the middle. Scoop it under there.
And you can use your spatula to also press down on the tops of the bread to just aid absorption of the egg.
Yep.
John's just pressing with his hand.
Oh, that's fine. If you have hands still, I know mine.
Hopefully you won't get brain.
I think this is one unique thing about the way at least Roti John is in terms of cooking style for an egg sandwich, which is in like the Western egg sandwich cooking method. I've never really seen bread being put directly onto an undercooked egg. It's usually kind of is cooked separately and then placed onto it. But I think it adds kind of flavor to the whole dish, right? Because the bread becomes more flavorful, having it absorb the whole mixture, etc.
I mean, it's crazy because I think, you know, for all the New York aspiring restaurateurs watching, like, I mean, breakfast egg sandwiches have been like outrageously trendy the last 5 years. So this is probably the next $1 million idea, which hopefully you capitalize on.
I hope so.
So where are you looking to open a restaurant?
So I signed a lease for a spot in Washington Heights. It's pretty far uptown, even higher up than Columbia is. So like 166th and Amsterdam. It's 2 blocks from the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital and all the associated like dental and medical offices and schools. And so I felt like it was a good opportunity, and there's really not a lot of Asian food up there. So I feel like it's an untapped market. If I've learned anything from business school, it's don't open where there's too much competition. So.
All right. So
yeah,
what's next?
I think we're gonna flip it pretty much. I might find like 10 more seconds just to firm up a little.
This is the hard part, guys.
Yeah, we don't have
Yeah. So for those who
apparatus.
yeah, if you don't have a plate of the right size to do that flipping, like don't freak out. You can obviously use a spatula. It just there might be a little disintegration. It'll still taste great, so.
All right, I don't want to steal your thunder. So you go then.
I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, let's watch you do it first.
Okay. Let's go.
Plate on top, flip. Oh, nice.
So it'll look like that.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think, well, oh no, you did it with that. Where was it even cooking?
Are you okay? It looks good.
Yeah, well, there's a little leftover egg for Storm
Yeah,
for when
well,
she's starving.
Well, John tried to do it. Maybe it was a mistake to use it on a pan that had 2 handles because you can't really hold
Yeah,
a
no,
plate
we're at a loss for like non-stick stuff.
Yeah.
So let me see.
But it should look like this. So it's pretty much like a flat egg and meat mixture with the rest having been absorbed into the bread. Yeah, that looks perfect. Wow, you're a pro, John.
Yep. That's because I went to Yale.
So before we close this sandwich up, we're gonna dress it with the sauce we made earlier, the spicy ketchup. So I'm gonna go pretty heavy on it because I like the sweetness and spice from it. But if you're hesitant, you can also omit putting it in at this point and then use it as a dipping sauce after. So I put the sauce in, I'm closing up the sandwich. And then in Singapore, we typically serve it cut into about 4 to 6 pieces, depending on the size of the baguette. And then it just makes it easier to eat, kind of like sliders. So I'm cutting it into 4 right now.
When you buy it, they give it to you on what, a piece of paper or like
for
already
this,
cut
it's
up?
usually on a plate. Some other noodle dishes will serve on a banana leaf or in like wrap paper, but this one is usually served on a plate, so it'll look like that.
So even in like to-go situations?
If it were to go, it'd probably be in like a shell, like a clam shell.
Okay.
Yeah.
In pieces, yeah, like that.
Okay, I only cut mine in half because I have a smaller baguette than you, but here's mine-ish. I should do better side.
John, I'm very impressed. I mean, night market founder, chef on the side. It's beautiful. Both of you. It looks amazing.
Oh.
Amy, I might have missed this, but is this one of the dishes that you consistently, regularly serve at the market?
Yeah, so actually, no. And the reason for that is having joined the market just out of business school, I was really obsessed with efficiency. Like, how do I rack out the number of orders with kind of the least amount of in-person prep, because that would make wait times long. Right. So for like cooking anything a la minute or like on the spot was kind of ruled out for me based on my way of thinking, which actually I kind of revised my way of thinking halfway through, because I realized like from a practical standpoint, lines are not always so bad because they build interest and hype, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, that's why I decided to include it in my menu, like going forward, at least for lunch, and kind of see how people respond to it. And if Queensland Market takes me back next summer, it's something I'll definitely look into serving there.
That's really funny, because that was going to be my question is, you know, we obviously, you guys were talking and giving anecdotal kind of stories. And then I was thinking to myself, gosh, I wonder if this is something that she serves at the market, and how long would it take if no one was distracting her and she was just, you know, grilling it up and sending it off. So that's really interesting. if I may, Amy, we got a question in Zoom that I would like to share with you. I know that you started to tell a little bit about your brick and mortar store that is coming in the near future. Maybe you can talk just like a little bit about what the plans are for that. And if in fact you've had to adjust or pivot due to the restrictions due to COVID, because we don't know how long they're going to last, and what is your timeline for getting that up and running. So if you could address that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Amy, while you're eating, while you're talking, I'm gonna eat. So I'm starving.
Yeah.
It's really hot.
Yeah, so it definitely was adjusted. I think in an ideal timeline, I would have opened this summer. But in a way, it was a blessing in disguise because I didn't sign any lease or any kind of big commitment before COVID hit, right? And so therefore, I was able to negotiate better terms on my lease and kind of pivot adjust my financial projections to see if it was still tenable to continue with the plan. The good thing is I had always envisioned opening as a fast casual, heavy on delivery and like off-premise dining kind of model. So it wouldn't have, like if I were planning to open a full service restaurant, I think I probably would not have proceeded with it just because I have no idea how that's going to look, you know, with indoor dining and safety of employees, etc. But given that I was already planning to run on a very lean team at the start and do like at least 50% off-premise, it didn't affect my projected business model so much. So I think for me, I was able to actually, it sounds bad, obviously COVID has been awful, but I've been able to kind of use the realities of COVID to be realistic about how I plan my next steps. And so right now we are looking at an late October, kind of early November opening. And I'm going to focus a lot of my marketing on the community in the near vicinity. So people from the med school and doctors and nurses, and also like there are many multi-generational families who live in Washington Heights that I think would love a new Asian option available to them. So I'm hoping for the best. I think it'll be fine.
You know, I think you're absolutely right, but it is all about the silver linings right now, because that's what we all need to focus on here and there with all the things that are going on, all the challenges that this has presented. You know, we've all had some silver linings here and there, and certainly Yale Alumni Live has been one of them, because this is something that grew out of wanting to connect people in a time where we can't connect. My role at the Alumni Association is with regional clubs, and we are truly responsible for bringing people physically together in a place that, you know, we can't do anymore. So this is a silver lining for me. And now, John and Storm, what else would you like to tell everybody about the cookbook or about the market? I was looking to see if we missed any questions, but I think we got most of them. Any parting final thoughts or questions for Amy that you wanted to share?
Well, one thing about the cookbook is you kind of outed us by asking Amy if the roti was at the Queensland market. So John was the one who curated the recipes in the book. He, you know, made sure there was a bit of everything and different types of things to please different palates on the balance. But I think it's a nice mixture. So for people who know the night market, you'll find a lot of dishes that are at the night market. But also if you know the night market and, you know, have tried everything, not that that's possible because there are new vendors all the time. A lot of vendors also include extra recipes that are exciting and have not been seen at the night market yet. So it's just more from the repertoire. It's exciting to sort of muse on like whether we'll see more of that in the future and another iteration of the food business.
And if you have or have not been to the Queens Night Market, the cookbook is a way to stay connected to it and also put $2 in our pocket every time you possibly buy one. So, so I got $10 in my pocket right now. This is great.
It's directly to recording and preserving the oral histories, which will hopefully be a public, which will definitely be a public resource in the future. And I think really important. I don't want to be a downer, but you know, these times are really hard on the food industry, and it's really personally worrying to me. I mean, we just love being able to eat food from all over the world all the time. And I'm really worried about so many small businesses that won't survive. And, you know, my like version of hell is actually where he's from in Texas. Sorry.
It's not true.
No, but it's like, you know, there's like suburbia where it's like all just like
also
chain,
not true, but
you know, restaurants.
The opposite of the cultural explosion that is New York City, right? That's where you're getting it.
I'm like, you know, like, you know, these days I've been waking up, you know, in a slight panic that, you know, what if, you know, if we don't keep supporting these small businesses, you know, how many will be left next year? And it's
Right.
just like one of the great joys of New York City living and the American life in general.
Well, what I love, what I
Yeah.
love about Queens Night Market are the few things that we talked about at the very beginning. And I'm not quite sure that you said the last thing, but I want to reiterate for anybody who's watching, who's stuck with us through the whole hour, is the $5 price point that makes it affordable for just about anybody. The fact that you are so close to public transportation and you're so accessible, you know, physically to get there. The fact that you have exposed people to cultures that they otherwise would not be able to get to experience and enjoy. And the fact that John told me at one point, I believe, that you've helped launch a number of businesses. And like Amy was saying, is that she really kind of got involved with you guys at the onset of her building her business. So I don't know, John, if you want to just share that little fact. I mean, I think that's so amazing what you guys have done for the community.
Well, yeah, I mean, the $5 price cap puts a lot of pressure on not just my business, but all the businesses that participate. So, you know, we do everything we can to keep vendor fees at the absolute minimum. So basically, we price, just to give away the secret sauce, we price vendor fees exactly to where we expect to break even. So we don't make $1 on vendor fees. And so we just, you know, the best stories I think are often these sort of mom and pop shops or, you know, Amy shops that come and visit and start at the night market. And since we started, by the last count, we helped launch over 300 brand new New York City businesses. So meaning that over 300 New York City businesses have made their operational debut at the Queens Night Market. So not all of them still exist. And, you know, some are doing soaringly well and others are sort of struggling along. But, you know, I think it's, you know, we try to help out small businesses as much as possible. And we even do free business seminars every year to help people, encourage people, maybe sometimes discourage people, but often encourage people to take on new businesses or try to start new businesses.
I just think it's amazing and I love it, especially in this climate, in the world that we're living in. I think it's so important to hear the stories of the people that are living around us and to experience their culture through food, which is probably the greatest joy of all, food, right? So we got one other question for Amy that just came through, that somebody would like to know if they ever add cheese on the Roti John in Singapore, which I think you might have mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so it's definitely a very common addition. I think it's usually shredded mozzarella or cheddar, any kind of meltable cheese. And that's usually, if you want to do it at home, I would, after you flip it onto your plate successfully, I would at that point scatter it on, put on the sauce, close it, and let the ambient heat do its magic. So I think that would be like a great addition. Actually, the reporter who covered Roti John on her Bloomberg article said that having tried it once, the next version she's going to make is with cheese. So I encourage everyone to give that a shot.
Cheese lovers unite, because we are strong in numbers as far as I know. And then we do have one more question actually too, which I think I know the answer, but I'll let John and Storm take this. A question about the cookbook. Does it have the lemonade with currants recipe in it?
It does not. It has a like a limonada from Colombia, but not the lemonade with currants. And I don't know if that's specifically directed toward Amy. Is that something you served?
I think it was just about the cookbook, but perhaps Amy, do you have a lemonade?
So I did serve one. It was calamansi juice with salted plum in it. I know that in the cookbook there is a lemonade and pandan recipe from the Malaysian project that sounds super cool that I want to try. So if we're looking for citrus-based drinks, I think the cookbook will cover you. Yeah.
The cookbook is organized in such a wonderful way. We have recipes by type and recipes by continent and all the stories of the vendors. Like I can't say enough good things about it. I've been showing off my copy to all my friends and family. I've had a great time with you guys tonight. I don't see any other questions, but if anybody has any, we will stick around in the Zoom for the next couple of minutes. I know Amy's mom was watching, so she might want to come back and say hello to us. And John and Storm and Amy, I so wish that I could go to the market. I'm sure that we all wish we were at the market this summer, but hopefully it will be back next year and we can all have a lemonade together. Any parting thoughts before you go?
What I do want to encourage people. So Amy's about to start her restaurant in hopefully October, November. So please give her Instagram a follow and give a boost. You can follow Queens Night Market at Queens Night Market. And Storm is running this new Instagram account at The World Eats Here Cookbook. So if you have experiences, if you're cooking your way through the book, tag that and share your pictures with the World Eats Here cookbook. And
it's really fun. I mean, that's why we do stuff like this, because we are so far from pro cooks, and we're trying to show, like, if we can handle it and we are not super talented in the kitchen, then so can you.
We've made a mess of some of them, that's for sure. So let's not let's not oversell ourselves.
But they always taste good anyway.
They do taste good. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys all for being here. Amy, thank you so much. John, Storm, anybody who wants to ask any questions is welcome to stick around in the Zoom.
Here.
And we'll be here, but that's all for tonight. Come back next week. We've got an amazing home-to-home concert on Friday. You can check it out on the Yale Alumni website. We've got musicians coming in from Paris. It's going to be amazing. We'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.